Hello, Beth.
Hi, how you doing over there?
I am doing great. I'm so happy we're finally getting to do this interview. Thank you so
I
much for
know.
being here.
Me too. I wish it was in person. I wish I was coming to see you. Hopefully one day soon.
I know. Believe me, all the people that I'm interviewing, I always wish it was in person because they would come to Israel and we can have
Yes,
like a big party with all the guests. That's something that we
one
should
day.
think. That's something
One
we
day.
should think about. A Jewish woman entrepreneur's big party in Israel.
Awesome.
That would be really awesome. And you just told me just before we got online that you came to Israel so many times that you probably know that country as if you would live here. But before we go into more details, I would love to first share who you are, Beth, with everyone who doesn't know you yet. And then we're going to dive right in all the questions that we have for you. So I'm gonna ask you to pronounce your last name for me because I don't want to butcher it.
No, no. Nydick.
Nydick. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. So Beth Nydick is a speaker, an author, a podcast host, and a business mentor who started building her online community as a second career by using her experience to help educate others and grow their businesses. After working in media such as NBC, MTV, VH1, Oprah, Warner Brothers, Viacom, and Universal, as well as being an online entrepreneur, she decided it was time for a career shift. Using the experience and knowledge gained during those 20 years, she now is a coach and run a digital agency. So I love that. And I'm going to tell you even really why I love that journey and how you're presenting how, we of course know, about narrative, right? Narrative is really
Hmm.
about presenting who we are. And this is your choice of narrative to say, I was there, I made a shift and now I'm here. And I'll tell you why I love this. I mean, my brand is called the Born to Do Business. So I
Hmm.
believe that we're all born to do something unique, something special. And I work a lot with people who discover that maybe sometimes later in life, and sometimes they don't like to talk about it. Sometimes like, yeah, I've been doing this my whole life, but really there are shifts and there are different stages, and like I said, we're always in the
Oh yeah.
spiral, we evolve. And so I would love to hear your story of where you were, apparently in this successful media corporate, surroundings, and no reason to change apparently. And
Hmm.
why did you leave all that behind and became who you are today? Because some people would say, are you crazy? Like, why didn't you stay there? So tell us the story.
Kids. That's really the reason.
Oh,
I when we asked the question, I was so pregnant working in TV. My kids were 10 pounds born. So and I'm only 5'1". I'm not a big person. So you could imagine I'm like traipsing into the city, working 16 hours a day. I was like, I just can't.
wow.
So I stepped back from the hustle and bustle because what I was doing was like grabbing a cameraman and running in the streets of New York and doing this story and doing that story. And I loved it, but it was just like, I was ready to be a mom, ready to stay home and have kids and do all that kind of stuff. And I did that for a little while and then I was getting crazy. So I
Wow.
was really thinking at that point was, okay, what can I do with my experience where I can still be home with my kids? What can I teach? What can I share? And my love of food, because I love to cook and I love to bake and I love to create. What I really think I love to do is actually feed people.
Okay.
So I was teaching other moms how to feed people. And I loved it. I was a food blogger, but then I used my years of media to get picked up by national media. So I was able to ascertain a segment on Dr. Oz. I became a Dr. Oz blogger. And then it really, like, the wheel started turning from there because I was able to leverage those experiences to get published. And I have a published cookbook called Clean Cocktails, Righteous Recipes for the Modern Mixologist. It's available
Okay.
anywhere online. It's an international bestseller. We did all the stuff. And I loved it. And what I did to leverage that, because for me, it's all about leveraging to the next experience, leveraging to the next layer. I was doing speaking engagements. I was like a keynote speaker, and I would come in and I would talk about how we got the book made without, I think it was called How to Get Published Without 50,000 Followers. Because at
Wow.
that time, the follower count was really, really expansive. And afterwards, instead of the people in the audience coming up to talk to me about cocktails and food and health and wellness, they wanted to talk business.
Okay.
So
That's
I
fantastic.
would come home and I would tell my husband, he's like, well, maybe you should think about that. That was like the extent of the conversation. But then I started helping my friends. Like, you'd be like, Beth, can you meet me at the library for an hour? And like 3 hours later, and I'd have your whole PR strategy and your marketing strategy written, and then my friend Wendy said, who was big in the digital space and she had a coach. She said to me, Beth, you helped me more this afternoon than my $20,000 a month coach. First
Oh
of all,
my
I was
God.
like, there's $20,000 a month coaches. I didn't know that at that time. There are. I'm not one of them, but there are. And I really leaned into it. And everything opened up when I leaned into using where I had been, what my superpowers are, what my genius part is, and then how I wanted to serve people. And it's become this agency where I have a done for you and done with you. And I get to not only create people's futures, but I get that I allow them the space to recreate whatever they want from the past.
Wow. So if I understand correctly, you used all your experience on yourself first and on your business. You saw that it was successful, and then organically people came starting asking you questions and say, wait a second, I have all this knowledge, all this experience on how to get people, the media's attention and the PR. I should do this, as my business. And you
Yeah.
shifted from cooking books and all the cooking
All
shows
that
to
stuff.
only the digital media business.
Yeah,
Did
the
I get
digital
that right?
space of it. Yeah, totally. Digital space. Because I was like, what can I be doing to support people and the things that I know that I'm good at, that I
Right.
can see? Like, I'm sure you too, because you're in the business space. Like, I was like, I could be a business coach, but what's my specialty? Where does my
Right.
brain really, where does the strategy really come up? And it was in media. And that's
Like,
why it's like a business and strategy together. Because when I serve my clients or I teach classes, we're talking about how to use the business of media to coincide with your business and how to put them together so you actually make money. Because as
exactly.
you know, sometimes not everyone's making money in this business.
Yes, and they might look like they're making money, and they might look to be everywhere, and they're not actually making money. And I totally agree. I mean, I speak about that. I'm sure you know the concept of finding
Yeah.
your niche. And I know that my niche is the scaling stage. Why? Because I've been a consultant all my life. So I know how to hire a team. I know how to create the systems. I know how to create workflows and the processes. So everyone, being a business coach today doesn't help. It's not enough. You can't. You have to be specific into what you do and what is your angle. So I love that your angle is very specific and that you're helping the doing for you and the doing with you. But I want to talk a little bit more about PR and media. From my
Yes.
experience, and I know I've used those services in the past, probably not as much as I could have, but I know at least they exist. But a lot of my clients that are in the online space have this feeling that they can do it all on their own. Oh, I'll do this live, I'll do this selfie, or I'll post on Facebook, or I'll post on Instagram, and somehow I'm gonna have thousands of followers and I'm gonna have, attention. And of course, I mean, they can work really hard. I see them working really hard, like even hiring VAs and trying to be
Oh,
all
yeah.
over the place. But what I want to ask you, and this is really your expertise, is what is the difference between someone who is doing it all on their own and maybe doing a good job, but what are the results that they could get, versus working with a company like yours who is going to give them the PR and the media agency? Because there is this illusion that we can do it by ourselves because it looks easy. So I would love your input on what is the difference, between this
Yeah.
and working with a professional.
It does look easy, but I'll tell you, when you hire a PR firm, what you're paying for is their time and their relationships. Because,
Uh,
the average person doesn't have a contact at the Today Show that they can email or call right now, right? That's not saying that you couldn't send an email and get a reply. So what it does is it allow the space for more press, higher end press, but also having that strategy around it so that it can actually benefit your business. You
I
can
see.
do it on your own to a certain level, right? You can get someplace in a certain way, but when I tell you that my team is on the phone all day long, you can't run a business and be on the phone and in emails all day long. Like, you
Right,
just can't do both. And
right,
but depending on, let's take it back to a second. Like, what's your goal? Depending on what your goals are, you can do it on your own. And I teach a lot of women how to do it on their own because their goals are at that space. And then a
right.
lot of people usually go from, I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to do it with somebody that's going to help me. And then I hire somebody to do it because your business has grown along the way. So when you're starting out, I always say to my clients, my first TV experience was at my local high school.
Right.
Right. So start at your local high school, get into your synagogue's newsletter, get into your town's paper, have the local news cover you. Because if you're doing all that, we can call it grassroots, and then you
Right.
come to somebody like me, you have the foundation to build upon so that larger platforms can have seen you talk, have heard you on a podcast, have, read what you've written. So it's depending where you are in your business is what kind of support you need, because there's no jumping the line. right? You need to. My first experience on TV was with Dr. Oz, but I also spent years and years behind the camera. You know, when producers hear that I'm a former producer, they're like, oh, okay, because I know how it works. And yes, some people do get on Good Morning America their first try, but if you want to build a business that's going to be financially successful and a brand it's going to be recognizable, there is a strategy to getting from your local high school or your synagogue's newsletter to a regional, national, international stage.
Right, definitely. And so you're like the shortcut. You're like taking a process that could take years or thousands of emails. You're the shortcut because you already have them on your cell phone on your first name basis, and you just have to pick up the phone. So that I get. But
the strategy around it, so how it's actually going to benefit your business, because it's great to get on Good Morning America. Let's say that like you're a pen company and you have 1,000 pens in your basement, because usually where they are. If you go on Good Morning America and sell this pen, you're going to sell 25,000. It's going to break your business.
Right.
There's so many businesses that have been on those kinds of shows. There's one candle company, and if you Google it, you can find this information. A candle company that couldn't fulfill the orders, and people were so upset, and the Yelp reviews and the reviews online, it busted the company, and the company folded.
Wow.
By having a great press piece. But if you had somebody helping you, and you had somebody on your team that said, okay, we need to get the candle company up and running so that we can fulfill these many orders, or we can send an email saying, please be patient. Like there's stuff along the way, that crisis management stuff along the way that you can do, that if you haven't been this and you're a candle maker who's started a business, you're not going to know the other side of it. You're not going to know the media piece of it or the business piece of it. And that's why you need somebody to support you.
Right, definitely. But I would that you actually jumped straight into my other question, which was, and you partially answered it, but I still would like to break it down with you, because of course, intuitively everyone understands, oh, if I go on TV, it's great publicity. But I would like your input in breaking it down. Like, what is it going to do to a business to have, like, how does it work from I went on TV and I have 25,000 orders? Like, what is this process that happens? Like, do I go on TV because of my ego? Do I go on TV because I want my mom to see me and say, hey, I was on TV? Do I go on TV because I want to have more orders? Like, what are the different strategies? I'm sure it depends on which business you have. Yes. But I would, intuitively we say, yeah, of course, if I go on TV, it's going to give me more exposure. But the next question I would have is, so what? Like, exactly. Okay, so I have more exposure, so what? So can you take us through those steps that make sense for, especially I have in mind those solopreneurs that would benefit from exposure like this, but don't really know either what to do with it, or if they really need it, or what is it going to do for them?
So it's all about the visibility. And it's funny you say the ego, because they're the vanity logos, the logos that everybody wants to have on their website, are the logos that make you money. So when I start working with a client or in a class, this is what I always ask: where is your audience already watching, listening, and reading? Right. Because if we can figure out what those three things are for them, the rest of your audience is there. And this goes back to the media coaching, the business coaching. You don't need 5,000 followers to make 6-7 figures, right? Figuring out how many people you actually need in your business, where they're reading, where they're watching, what they're listening to. Like, I know this podcast is going to get to people in my audience. Right. So they're going to come look at my Instagram, get my opt-in from my website. And that's going to allow me to be more visible to the people who are going to hire me. Right. If I'm going on, like Drew Barrymore, I was on a couple weeks ago, or a couple months ago now, or at Good Morning America. These things are for credibility, but you need to lay the foundation for you to use the credibility to get you on bigger, better stages. For me, being on the national media shows my higher end agency clients social proof. Oh, if Beth can get herself on here, she can get me on here. Right. But when you're talking about the solopreneur, that's actually not going to help you to do that kind of stuff. That's an ego thing. What's going to help you is somebody listening to a podcast and you pouring your heart about your passion and then resonating with them, and then them hiring you. Right. So again, it goes back to your goals. Do you want to get on a book deal? Do you want to get on bigger stages and get paid more for speaking? Or do you want more people in your funnel?
Right. Also, I love that answer. That's really clear. And you said that by being on the Jewish Women Entrepreneurs podcast, it is reaching exactly your audience. So let's talk about this, because as everybody knows, in each episode, I like to talk about the three aspects of our podcast: the Jewish aspect, the women aspect, and the entrepreneurs aspect. So we did cover the entrepreneurs. We know what you do and we know your business, and we see how successful you are. I would like to touch more the women and the Jewish. So starting with the women. we spoke just before we went online. I asked you, like, how is it the space? How is this space for women? And you said mostly women, right? The industry,
Yeah.
the publishing industry is mostly women. But when I asked you, okay, so there's nothing to do, you know, to advance women, or there's nothing left to do, you said, oh no, of course there is. So I would love for you to tell us, like, what if you had, you know, a suggestion to make, or even like an observation on your industry, where is the next step for women to gain more leadership and to gain more, you know, more room in this space? What is your observation on this?
Well, so we're talking about the media industry and the PR industry and the online digital space. Like, I don't work in corporate. I've never worked in a corporate agency, so I'm sure that happens there. But in the digital space and the PR, like if you Google PR coach or PR whatever, it's going to be 99% women. It's just the way that it is. But I think to advance it is to have more women be able to step up into the leadership roles. And I think women like me, how you say it correctly, like women that are in my space, it's how do we bring up other women? How do we show them that there is a way for them to own their own business and to run their own agency, or to own their own whatever it is that they want to own? Because I really feel like I could be more of an example for how you can do things. You know, I have two little kids. Now I have two big kids, but I had two little kids when I started. You know, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I just was like, what am I passionate about? What can I help other people with? My brain. So if you and I allow the space for women to hear this conversation and say to them, hopefully say to themselves, wait a minute, I can do that. Or here's somebody, I can follow Beth and I can follow Natalie and see what they're doing. And they can be an example and an inspiration to me, because we are not always taught to step into our own light.
Right.
You know, I live by this kind of motto, is that you make everything mean something. Mm-hmm. Right? Say you called me for coffee and I never answered you. What does that mean? That means that I don't want to be your friend. I don't like you. You're not worth my time. Or it means that I just didn't call you back. Right. You can make up a whole story. Oh, she didn't get the message. She's too big. Like, you can make up all this stuff. Or you called me and I didn't call you back. That's actually what happened. Right. Right. So if you could take all the story out of what you're thinking about creating and just create it. Like, I'm not good at like forward thinking where things are going sometimes. And I do that on purpose so that I can't stop myself from creating a new piece. Like, I'm creating a new opt-in this week. Right. And I can judge myself, or I send an email to a big producer and he's not going to answer it. He's not going to like it. She's not going to do it. I just hit send. So if we talk more about how it actually works and what our limitations are, because I feel like people who are just starting out in this crazy entrepreneurship that we choose to do, besides it really actually being about personal development, because that's, you know, as you gain more momentum, you also gain more self-esteem, you gain more about who you are, you know, it all kind of goes in that direction. I'm sorry if anyone didn't realize that, but this is really all about
definitely. Therapy. I'm with you on that. Definitely. It's 100% the way it works. 100%.
Right. So if we can, if we actually have the real conversations, like if you go back in my feed, you'll see me videos of like, this sucks. I just can't do it today, guys. And I share that stuff so that we're not put on a pedestal. Well, they do it all the time, right? So I can't do it. Instead, it's like, oh, Beth screws up all the time and she tells us about it. I can do this too. So that's my way of like allowing a path behind me, is to actually see what it's like and have those real conversations. If anyone listens to any podcast I'm on, I'm brutally honest about how I suck, you know, how you suck, because we all suck. I always feel like everyone's like, we're great. I'm like, no, we suck most of the time and we get greatness. Right. Instead of the other way around, because if we were great all the time and we sometimes sucked, we'd stop. Right. And this is all about pushing yourself through to the next stage, to the next whatever. You know, I have big plans for what I'm doing next. Right. And when I work with my clients, I always say to them, are you going to be doing this in 10 years? And they're like, yes. I'm like, you don't know that. No. So let's create what you're about instead of what the market wants, or let's create what you can think instead of what somebody else is doing. And I just think that space allows for so much collaboration and persistence and perseverance that I think that a lot of people don't know that they have. And I think that's actually the way to be successful in what we do.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that you're talking about the, you know, the stories that we tell in our head, and the imposter syndrome, and the, you know, fear of failures. And sometimes it's even the fear of succeeding, because that is a lot. I know I work 99% of my clients are women. And that is what I see in terms of the mindset that has to be shifted. And everything starts with self-worth, and everything starts with this unconscious, you know, belief that women have, that they have to be reassured that they're going to be successful. I mean, we have a gap to catch, right? I mean, we have a lot of time to catch up. I mean, men
Correct.
have had their chance to make, mistakes and to come back and to have their ego. We're just starting now, like baby steps, so every time we fall, it feels like, wow, my God, I'm never going to make it. But we know that, this is exactly what you said, that we need to really be role models for people who want to start and say, yeah, you're going to fail. Yeah, you're going to fall. You're going to suck. And it's okay. You're going to get back up. And that's called being an entrepreneur. And, just join the club.
Yeah, like, in every stage that you're at, like, I have friends who are 6, 7, 8, 9 figure business owners. And at every stage, they're at the same stage, no matter if you're at, their first 6 figures or your 10th 6 figure. Like,
Exactly.
and every time you level up,
Right.
like, to be completely honest, like, I was like, a friend of mine had a job opportunity in her business, and I like was seriously thinking about it, because I was like, I'm at a place where I know that I'm scaling right now. I'm growing, I'm getting bigger, and it's hard and it's
Yes.
scary. And
Yeah.
I was like, and I had dinner with my husband, and he's like, he was so surprised that was even a
Wow.
thought. And by the time I woke up the next morning, I was like, no, yeah, forget, I'm not doing that.
No
And she
way.
even said to me, she's like, I knew you weren't going to, but I feel like you need to have that exercise for yourself to
Right.
reassure yourself that this is the right
It's
thing.
like testing yourself at each level. But I definitely, and this is what I tell clients, and this is what I go through also. It's like I always say, new level, new devil, right? It's like you
Oh
think,
yeah, I love that.
yeah, it's exactly that. Like, oh, now I have enough clients and life is going to be, pretty and everything's going to be easy. Nope. Now you have the scaling stage. Now you have the systems. Now you need to hire. Great. I have a team. Great. Now you have to, increase your profit, and you have to optimize your cost, and you have to, I mean, it never ends,
I'm starting
right?
to sweat, Nat. I'm starting to sweat.
Okay,
I'm like, I know I'm doing all that. I know.
I'm going to stop right here, but I hear you, and I think that it's really our personal development journey, which is love. What I love about being a solopreneur is that we get 2 in 1. We get to make money and to do what we love. Actually, 3 in 1: make money and do what we love, but also grow as a person and become, bigger than ourselves, and always push ourselves to our limit and go outside of our comfort zone. So I know it could be tiring and you can have downs, but at the end of the day, you're just ready for the next fight. Just ready for the next
1,000%. But what I really like that you didn't say is that impact piece.
Yes.
Because I feel like women get so caught up in that impact piece, and I want to help others, and I want to do this. Like, that is not the biggest part of my business. Do I want to make an impact on my clients? I always say, like, once you're in the fam, you're in. But if you're not in the family, like, I'll wait till I get to know you a little bit, right? But I think a lot of people talk about this impact on the world, and it makes it so big. And I think that's what really makes it scary for a lot of people.
Yes.
And you don't need to want to help everybody, and you don't need to want to make an impact on everybody. You can want to make an impact on your little circle. And like I said before, you don't need 5,000 people to get to your goal. It's really this very small amount of people. And if you can shrink that whole idea for yourself, I just think it's a lot easier to then do all the stuff that was making me sweat.
Exactly. And it's so true that women, purpose-driven entrepreneurs, which are probably, I didn't check the stats, but probably 99% of the solopreneurs, right? They're, purpose-driven, and they think about this impact on the world before they think about the impact on themselves. Like, can you pay the bills? Can you put money on the side? Can you save money for your kids? Can you go on vacation? Can you, first have an impact on yourself, make, this prosperity and this life of abundance before you can change the world. That is really a big lesson that we have to learn as women. On the other hand, it's also great to have that vision and that long term, and saying, yes, when I will be there, I will, love to have, impact on the world as a consequence of my success. And I think that this is where we use, our purpose driven in our business. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that as a role model for the women. And the last piece that I want to talk about is the Jewish part. So before we got online, you said, yeah, of course, I've come 30 times to Israel, and my kids went to summer, and I spent summers, and my parents have a business, a tour guiding business. They go, for 30 years. So I feel like you're so, connected to Israel and to your Jewish identity. You also told me that everything around you, your neighborhood, your synagogues, your temples, your Jewish schools. So it's not the challenge. I know we've spoken to other people, other women that, are sometimes also have to speak up about their Jewish identity. For you, it sounds like it's more natural. It's more part of who you are already. Like, this is a fact. This is what you share. But you shared with me something interesting. You said, without even noticing it, your whole team is made of Jewish people. Your clients are mostly Jewish, but you didn't have this a strategic direction, said, yes, I only want to work with Jewish people. It just happened like that. Can you tell us more, how did it happen? Like, how do you explain that all of a sudden you wake up, you turn around and you see that everyone around you is basically Jewish? Can you give us your observation on that?
It's funny that you say that. It's my comfort zone. I have to say, like, growing up, I went to yeshiva as a little kid. My parents were very involved in the Chabad community around here, supporting the Jewish community. We had Shabbat every night at my house. My husband's family had Shabbat every Friday night at his house too. So it's really a part of who I am. And when I'm out in the world, I talk about being a Jewish girl from Jersey. So for me, and I've had anti-Semitic events in my life happen. Like, unfortunately, we all have, but I don't live in a place where I feel like that's an issue because I'm surrounded. We were talking before, like when I'm interviewing somebody or I meet somebody new, I almost feel like Hashem kind of brings the right people into your life as well. But, you're talking to somebody and I'm like, in my brain, I'm like, she's Jewish, the name, and my name's not outwardly Jewish, but I think that I vibe with Jewish women because I've lived my life with Jewish people in my small circle, in my inner circle. Right. So if I'm going to trust and be somebody at my team, it goes back to like that Jewish ethics and morals. The world's crazy right now, but when you have that Jewish basis, I don't know, like it's unattainable, like you can't touch it. It's just that Jewish magic. Right. I'm comfortable there. That's what resonates with me. It's not like I love everyone who's Jewish, right? Like we're still people. There's still people that I don't like and you don't like, that kind of thing. But for me, I think there was a comfort. There was like a level of camaraderie and a level of understanding each other because maybe we grew up similarly. Maybe they have like a Jewish background like I do. And I think just that basic understanding is what made me comfortable. And then I have and they're just amazing women in what they do. And I was lucky enough to have them within what I do.
Right.
Wow. Growing up, my parents were always very involved in the community, involved in bringing Jews from Russia and Ethiopia when they came when I was younger. So I've had the example of how you treat your Jewish community and how you involve yourself in your Jewish community. And we were saying before, my kids are both going to a school where there's a Chabad and a Hillel on campus. And there's 3 or 4 Jewish fraternities. There's a couple of Jewish sororities. So living in that bubble is great. But I still need to be cognizant if there's the people outside my bubble and we need to support them. So my family, we do whatever we can, being in presence to rallies and walks and whatever. I live very close to New York City, so it's easy for us to get there. But just because I call it my shtetlish.
Right. Right.
But being outside that, but in saying that, like, so I live on a cul-de-sac and there is one of every ethnicity on my street. And we have 4 times a year, we all get together like on purpose. We're very close. And we have what they called it last year, Thanksgiving, but everyone brought a different food from their ethnicity. And we really educate each other. A very close friend of mine is Hindi, and she's taught me about that. And I've taught her about Judaism, and they're very similar, except that one's like based on a lot of love and we have a lot of guilt. So that was one of the only differences. No, I'm just joking.
Sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. But, but when I talk to other women who were brought up like we were, and they have their own ethnicity and it's important to them. So I appreciate Jewish women in my community, but I also appreciate other women who are just as connected to who they came from and what their heritage is. So I think that's an important point to make as well.
Yeah, very, very important. I'm so happy, very refreshing actually to hear that, people getting together from different, awesome. From different identity, from different religion, because now with the anti-Semitism, I feel like, everyone is going back into their house kind of. It's like, okay, now it's scary. So we're going back into our house and we're protecting ourselves, which we need to. I mean, I understand the people who do that, no judgment here.
No.
But it's so refreshing to hear that there's still this, camaraderie and this connection and this, that we can also learn from each other. I mean, this is the best way to do it, right? Not to be everyone is in their own ways. And I think that you're also, I mean, we see the news, it's like when people see the news from what's happening in Israel, and people think that, everywhere you go, there are bombs or people want to kill you, right? So we see it from the news perspective, and we see the numbers and we see the percentage, and the media. I mean, we love them for the visibility, but we also
have tell the whole story. Right.
Right, exactly. Like, they also make it like, big drama. And so I mean, I know from when I'm watching the news, it's like, oh my God, what's happening in the US? So I love, for Jews, I'm talking, for
It's
anti-Semitism.
crazy. But I think
Right,
that's why we have to, like, that's why it's important for me to send my kids to Israel and for them to
right,
be in a Jewish youth group and to be at a school that has a Jewish population.
right,
Because life is different than 20 years ago when I went to school, where like I went to a college that was mostly Jewish. My town was mostly Jewish. Everything's changing for the better, but I want to make sure that my kids are still connected
right,
and my family is still connected. And that happens by my husband and I showing up and
right.
being verbal about who we are.
Yeah. And that's the fine balance, right?
Yeah.
Being sure of who we are, but still being open with everyone else. I think that this is the balance that we all want. So, yeah, it's very refreshing to hear that there's still places where, it's safe. You don't have to, hide or anything. It's
Yeah,
safe.
my street's very safe. Come to my street.
Your street out
My
of the whole
street.
US.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much, Beth. That was an amazing interview. We learned so much about your journey and also about, how we can use media and press and TV and visibility to really leverage our success and leverage our business. So thank you so much for being with us, a guest. And I'm sure that we'll hear from you, and I'll be happy to interview you again in the future when we have great news to share. So thank you so much, Beth. And everyone, we will see you next week in another episode of the Jewish Women Entrepreneurs Podcast. Bye, Beth.
Bye. Thank you so much.